much for joining me for this week's video. Today I have a project vlog for you showing you how I took this drop shoulder t-shirt pattern and made this sleeveless summer top. So if that sounds like it will be of interest to you, I hope you will stick around. Hello again, friends. Welcome or welcome back to the Maybe Your Better Wanna Knits YouTube channel. I am your host, Kristen, and today I have a little bit of an experiment to share with you. I have a project vlog walking you through how I hacked my own Amancay t-shirt pattern into a sleeveless top for the summer. So the Amancay tee is a pattern that I published in 2024. It is a drop shoulder t-shirt worked in fingering weight yarn with this nice lateral braid detail at the back of each shoulder and at the hem, and a lateral braid bind off on the sleeves. A couple months ago, I got a new yarn from Hobby as part of their, I guess, influencer program, a campaign for their Rococo Linen. So here is that yarn, or what I have left of it. This is 36% viscose, 34% cotton, 30% linen. Definitely sounds like a good yarn for the summer. Let's scooch around here. However, when I signed up for this campaign, there wasn't a lot of information on the website about the yarn because it is, I guess, relatively new. And most importantly, there were no swatches, there were no projects showing the yarn. They also have a multi version of this that did have some projects, but I did not think to look at that. When I received the yarn, it turns out that, I don't know if you can kind of tell here, it has a very thick and thin structure. So you can see parts down here are thicker. It also has a bit of a marled look. So I had picked out some patterns that I thought might work for it, and none of them were going to work because the texture and the marling were going to interfere too much with the patterning of everything that I had considered. I realized I wanted something that was just mostly stockinette, and I couldn't find anything mostly stockinette at the right gauge. So I had swatched for this on a US 4, and it says US 2.5, which is a 3mm. I was not going to knit a whole garment on a US 2.5. I swatched for it on a 3, flat, and that was good. Slightly getting into the sheer area, but good. Anything, a bigger needle would have started to become too sheer. And as I said, I was not going to knit a big garment on tiny little needles. As we'll talk about in the next podcast, I've already got a pie camisole on the needles that is kind of a disaster because the needles are so small. I needed to come up with a pattern to use this yarn, and I thought about my t-shirt design. So this is knit in a fingering weight yarn, but this has alpaca in it. So you can see it's very drapey and airy. I didn't want another t-shirt like this because I already have one. So I thought, what if I use my own pattern to create a sleeveless top? So ultimately that is what I did. This is the result. I sort of started loosely with the numbers from my original, trying to get it to be about the same sized finished bust circumference. And then I just kind of winged it a lot. So what I'm going to do is show you the process of making this from start to finish, and then we'll talk about how it turned out. All right, friends, so I'm going to be hacking my Amancay t-shirt pattern to be a tank top, which basically means not going to have these little kind of cap sleeves that are here, but I am going to keep this same shoulder shaping. So to start off with, what I'm going to do here is to reduce the width of the back neck. So that is going to be pulling in closer Then I'm going to do the same shoulder shaping, but it's just going to go from the back neck to kind of the top of the shoulder here. So it's going to end up being a bit shorter. And then we're going to work down to the armholes, which are not going to be as deep because this is going to be a sleeveless top. So we want the armholes to pull in closer to the body. And then we'll put things on hold and pick up for the front along the shoulder edges. So let's scroll down here and look at the original schematic. So that means I probably should. So the original size I did, I think, is the 3. So that original back neck width was 9 3/4. I'm probably going to chop about 3 inches off of that. And then that original armhole depth was 8 1/4. That's going to be much shorter because it doesn't need to fit around the upper arm. So we're pulling this in, we're going to work down here a little bit and then come down. So our armhole depth is probably going to be 8 1/4, maybe 1.5 inches shorter, because that's sort of the length from, if we're stopping here, then we just don't need all this additional. So let's give it a try and see what I come up with. All right, so this is the back of the original Amancay tee. And so we can see it has a wide neck. And then this slopes down and we pick up here. So this is not the top of the armhole. The top of the armhole is actually up here, but the shoulder point hits maybe like right here. So this is going to fold down like that. But for what I'm doing this time, I'm not going to have any sleeve. So as opposed to this rounder neck that slopes down here and creates a sleeve, and then pick up on top to create the other side of the sleeve, what we're going to be doing is, so we've shortened the width of the back neck, so it's also not going to fall down as far. It's going to be closer in here. And then we've created that diagonal line, and we want that to stop here, because that's where kind of we want the edge of our sleeveless top, no sleeve. So this line is only going to go like to here. Then we're going to pick up around here, which means right now what I'm doing, I keep saying we, is working down to, get it to focus there, is working this initial triangle, my God, I can't talk at all. I'm working this initial trapezoid. And so I don't want it, this is not the armhole from here to here. The armhole is actually up here. This part of the fabric doesn't exist yet though, because I'm going to be picking this up later. So I need to be measuring from here. This is the point where I need to measure. That is what I have done so far. I have worked this trapezoid. So I have worked this initial trapezoid. You can see here is the back neck. Here is this part here. And then here is this part here. So even though this looks too short for an armhole, this is not actually the armhole. The armhole goes all the way up here. So we're going to be measuring from here down to here. And this is a distance that I want to be about 6.5 inches. I want, so a normal armhole for something where you're going to pick up sleeves, you want to have about 1 inch of ease, maybe a little bit more, for sort of a standard fitting armhole. But here I want the armhole to fit very closely. I don't want a lot of ease because I don't want it gaping open. Maybe you can see your bra, it's dropping down too far. We don't want that because there's no sleeve. So we want a closer fitting armhole without much ease. So what I'm going for here is about 6.5 inches. Let's see how we're doing. We're at 6 inches, so I'm gonna work another 1/2 inch. Then I'm gonna put this on hold, and we're going to pick up along here for the front body. So what is gonna happen right now, let's say this is the front, obviously, the neck is gonna fall right here. I've knit this trapezoid that is on the back, so let's pretend that's the back. What I'm gonna do is pick up here and work a similar shape, while also, I'm just gonna pick up, that's gonna cover the top of the shoulder first, till we get it to about this point. Then we're gonna keep working that similar kind of shape for the front, while also doing some neckline shaping. And this, I'm gonna create a V-neck for this, okay? And then once the front also gets to that point, then we join the whole thing together and work in the round. I'm gonna make this a little bit of an A-line shape, not cropped, but sort of hitting right at the hip. And then I'm gonna work this same lateral braid bind off around the armholes and the neckline. So basically I'm gonna pick up stitches around and then just work the bind off right away to create that trim. I will also be creating the same braid trim on the back of the shoulder. So that is the plan. Let's move on. We are picking up stitches along our first shoulder. And in case you missed it, I recently did a tutorial on picking up stitches with the short tail of your yarn. And what that will do is make it so that my first row after picking up stitches is a right side row instead of a wrong side row, which means I can work my lateral Vikkel braid right away. Okay, I'm not really counting here because I'm, again, just kind of winging this and don't need a specific stitch count. I'm just going to make sure I pick up 1 stitch for every stitch. And this last stitch I'm going to pick up right here at the cast on edge, and there we go. And so since I picked up with the short end, my working yarn is actually back here, and I can start right away working that lateral braid. Now, I don't know what this braid is going to look like because you can see this is a very thick and thin yarn, but hopefully it's still going to look nice. Let's see. All right, so now I've worked my braid across. Now, if you are familiar with these lateral braids, you know the row after is very loose. You can sometimes fix this in the blocking phase, or you can just kind of leave it as a design element. So we'll see, undecided. So here is the neck edge. Here is the top of the shoulder. So I'm just gonna work straight for a little bit, and then I'm gonna start decreasing, no, increasing to create a V-neck. Okay, friends, so if you were thinking that this didn't look right, you are correct. So this original design, why is this all dusty? This original design was a drop shoulder, which means it was shaped, you know, kind of like this. And then when we got to this part, this was already the upper arm, and it was already bigger than that. But since this is going to be sleeveless, this needs to curve out to go under the arm, because it will not have all of this extra fabric that the original t-shirt style did to, you know, just wrap around the upper bicep. So I have in fact fixed that. So now we have the back of this piece and a section that will curve under the arm and over here as well, which means I also need to redo the front. But what I'm going to do this one first, actually, and leave this other one on hold so that I do this one, put this on hold, do this one, and then I can work straight across the front to the other side and around the back. So I swear I've been designing things for a long time. I know how things work. I just, forgot. So moving on. All right, so here we go. I have finished both fronts. And this one over here is on hold. So now I can knit across the front, the right front. I will cast on just 2 stitches for the bottom of this neckline, which you can see is a nice sort of rounded V-neck. Then work across the left front and then cast on under the arm and just work across the back and do the same. And then what I think I'm gonna do is just go right into the trim for the neck and armholes. I'll probably just, work a couple of rounds of the body to get it established and then go ahead and do those trims just so I can see what I like. What I think I'm going to do is just pick up around and then immediately do a lateral braid bind off. So that is a technique that I used on the Amancay tee, and I'm also using it on this upcoming design. And it basically just gives you this very nice bound off edge. Almost looks kind of like an I-cord, but it doesn't have that rolling to the opposite side, and will just be a nice neat trim around all of the edges. So let's give it a try. All right, so I did the trim around the neckline. So at first I tried just picking up and then binding off right away. I didn't like it. So I went ahead, I purled 1 round, and then I did the bind off. And I think that looks much better. You can see there's just a little gap in between the fabric and then this lateral braid bind off. It's not super smooth because this is kind of a thick and thin yarn, but I think it works well. We are looking good. I have just put like 1/2 inch on the body. I think it'll be a little smoother once it is blocked. I like the shape of the neckline. I probably could have gone a little lower, but I didn't want to have to join at the sides and then still be working flat all the way around. I just didn't feel like dealing with it. So things are looking good. I'm kind of torn here whether I want to go back and do the body or go ahead and just do all the armhole trim. I have put this on sort of over the shirt I'm wearing. And it does, fit, like the armholes are long enough. Obviously there's no body yet to see if the bust fits, but the armholes are long enough and the neckline fits as well. So far so good. I think I'm gonna do at least 1 armhole, but I might just do both so that I can get it done, and then I will just have the body, and the body will be worked down. It will have a bit of an A-line shape. I'm not gonna put a whole lot of math into it. I'm just gonna gradually increase until I like the width of the bottom. All right, so I do think this is, excuse my mess, it's okay. It might block a little bit, but I think I haven't done the other armhole yet, and I might try US 3 needle on this side and just see which I like better, because I'm just worried this is a little too close, maybe. But I still obviously have a lot of body left to go. All right, so I have redone the trim, or I finished the trim on the left side, and then it was a dramatic improvement. So I went ahead and redid the trim on the right side as well. And so now my armholes are going to be close fitting, which is what we want with a sleeveless top, but not too close. The neckline is still, this was done with the US 2. Had I not already woven on all of the ends around here, I would rip it out and redo it with the US 3. But I had already also woven in the ends on the armhole, and having to pull all of those out and pull out all of the trim was a traumatic experience, and I don't wish to repeat it. So it doesn't matter, obviously, as much on the neckline because it is very open. It's not going to be too close fitting, having been done on this size needle. So my goal, I went to the body, it was flat, was worked on a US 3. I went up to a US 4 when I started working in the round. But I used a US 2 on the trim because I really kind of wanted to see if I could counteract a little bit of the thick and thin nature of this yarn and just get a smoother, closer knit trim. But it ended up being just too tight around the armholes, and now they do look much, much better. Of course, this still hasn't been blocked, so they will like sit nicely once it is blocked. So again, I would do that. I would redo the neckline if I hadn't already woven in all my ends because they were getting on my nerves and I just wanted them out of the way. But I'm not gonna go through all of that again. So everything is done except the body. We're getting very close to the end. So here is the marker I placed after my try on, and I wanted to knit 4 more inches, maybe 5, we'll see. So I've got almost 2 more, so I don't have a whole lot left, and then I'm going to do the bottom trim just like the Amancay tee, and then we will be done. Right, so this is just trying it on before it's blocked. But you can see the armhole, you know, it's close fitting, but it's not way up there anymore. It's a much better fit. And probably I should have put bust darts in it, but I didn't. So, you know, it is what it is. Let's block it and actually see how this thing looks. So there you have it. Turned out a functional sleeveless top for the summer. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. You really can see a lot of this thick and thin texture that I think, you know, we can kind of all agree is not for everybody and not for every project. But given that this is mostly stockinette and has kind of a loose, drapey, breezy fit, I think it works well for this. I will say that some of the trim, so as I said, this is a lateral braid bind off, which I have used on a couple of designs now. It is essentially working a lateral Vikkel, Latvian, whatever you want to call it, braid while binding off simultaneously. It's not super refined and smooth because of the texture of the yarn, but I still think it looks nice. It gives this a nice firm edge. It doesn't pull in too much now that I have switched the needle size, but also even for here, which was done with the US 2, I think it still looks nice, and I don't think it pulls in too much. Now, if I were going to do formal pattern photos and publish this as a pattern, I would probably put some extra special finishing touches on this. So something I did with this that you can't really see back there, and that's a pattern that's going to be coming in a couple of weeks. It has a lateral braid around the bottom. And I just went through with after it was blocked, because blocking kind of flattens things a little bit. I went through after it was blocked with my steamer, put some steam on it, and then used a crochet hook to pull the lateral braid kind of upward out of the fabric to make it pop a little bit more. That's something I would probably do with this if I were going to be making this a pattern, and I really did not, because this one is really just for me. I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out, and I think it'll be a nice, comfortable, basic shirt to wear throughout the summer. It is nice and breezy. It does not have, as much drape as this one, because this one again is alpaca, or it's like 50% alpaca or something like that. But it's still with the viscose in there and knit a little bit on looser needles. I think this works well. So the body of the flat part of this, the yoke, was knit on a US 3. I switched to US 4 for the body, which is something I almost always do, switching from flat to in the round. My gauge is tighter. Most people's gauge is tighter. So I went up a needle size for the body. You can see it looks, it's nice and even. There's no discrepancy between the two parts. It is not too see-through. I didn't keep track of any of my stitch counts, really. So as I said in the earliest video, I wanted to narrow the back neck. So I just did a rough estimate of 3/4. I wanted to make it a little bit less wide, about 3/4 of the cast on that I did for the t-shirt, worked it down. And then the only other measurement I really did was a stitch count for the bust, to get the bust about the right size. So there you have it, hacking a drop shoulder t-shirt into a sleeveless top for the summer. So again, this is just a project that I did for me. However, the t-shirt version, Amancay, is available in my Ravelry and Pay Hip shops if you are interested in that. This is a size inclusive design, so it has 10 sizes. I cannot tell you off the top of my head what the largest bust circumference is, but it is a 5X. And this is worked in Camellia Fiber Company flax fingering. So this is a nice choice for a between seasons project, because it has that animal fiber, the alpaca, but it also has some linen and I think silk or something else in there to give it a little bit more breathability. Thank you again for joining me for this week's video. If you found it interesting or educational or entertaining, I hope that you will give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. New videos here every Saturday. Did take a break last Saturday because there were 5 Saturdays in March and there are 5 Saturdays in May, and that's just a lot of Saturdays. But we will be smooth sailing with Saturday videos for the foreseeable future. If you are looking for me on social media, you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as Media Peruana, and I will see you soon in another video.